Welcome to Denver Parks and Recreation at Home. My name is Vince, and today we're going to make Mosaic coasters. Here we have some examples of some Mosaic coasters here. I've got a couple of square ones, geometric, different kinds of glass, and I also have a circular one that I put in a plant saucer. So starting out, let's talk about some of our supplies. First, you're going to need a base that you're going to build your coaster on. Today we're going to work with three different bases here. I've got the plant saucer, and I've cut out a cork bottom because you need that cork bottom. We're going to use just plain cork bottoms. We're going to stick them together to give us just a little bit flimsy, a little bit more flexible. And then I've also got some popsicle sticks that we'll put together. In addition to all of this, you'll need some different size pieces of glass. I bought a couple sets, so I've got some broken randomly, and I've got some that are geometrically shaped. You'll need some glue. It doesn't matter exactly. Tacky glue, Elmer's glue, it's just going to hold it in place long enough for us to grout it. A couple of pieces of sponges. I just took one big one and cut them up. You'll need some craft grout and some disposable equipment so that you can mix that grout in and easily get rid of it when you're done. Make sure that you are wearing a mask when you're mixing your grout, and you have some gloves as well. Finally, we want to make sure that we seal our product so that the water and the condensation from your glass doesn't destroy your artwork. Before we dive right in, I want to spend a little bit of time looking at the different bases we have and talk a little bit about the choice that you're going to make when you make your base. So we're going to make one coaster just using some cork board. These are kind of flimsy. I'm going to go ahead and put two of them together. What's great about this option here is you're going to need cork or felt to cover the bottom, and this is kind of a cheap option for you. So if you just want to order that cork and you don't want to spend a lot more money getting a base to do this activity, that is fine. This works out pretty well. The downside is, since it's so flimsy, you'll want to stick with bigger pieces, bigger, jagged, longer pieces. That way, as you put the grout on, those pieces will add stability to your coaster and it won't break apart when it bends. On the second base, here I've got that same cork piece, but I want to make it a little bit more stable because now I want to use those small geometric pieces. So with those geometric pieces, I took some popsicle sticks, I just cut off the edges here. So I'm going to go ahead and peel off the back here. I'm going to line up those popsicle sticks just on the edge. And what this does is this helps give me a little bit more stability. So when I go and build, it doesn't matter if they're smaller, there might be a little bit more space in between those pieces, but I've got a little bit more of stability in this base. So two more there. Nice and sticky, you know that's great. And so now I have the second base, this one here. A little bit more sturdy, it won't bend as much. Our final base we're going to use is the plant saucer. I saw this idea and I thought it was really cool, it's really cute. What's awesome is that once I fill it in there, it's going to have a lip to help, hold your drink. The downside to something like that is obviously when it has that lip, it's harder to round out that grout. So what I'm going to use is a little bit of painter's tape a little bit later on when we get to this one. So our first project, we're going to go ahead and just use those two pieces of cork that we stuck together. Remember, with this, it's a little bit more flimsy. I want bigger pieces. So for this, I'm going to use these broken pieces of glass. What's great about this is that you can shape them, you can break them into smaller pieces if you need them to. I will say that if you are going to break them, make sure you are wearing safety glasses so that any shards of glass don't fly back up at you. I like these big pieces. They're going to add so much stability to this. I chose these colors here. I've got green and red and white. I'm going to go ahead and start lining them up on my coaster. I want a nice kind of shape without it coming off the edge. Obviously, if there's sharp glass coming off the edge, that's not going to be a safe coaster. So I think I'm going to start lining up my green here, and I want green all the way down this side. And I want to leave some space in between. And the reason I want that space in between is I want to make sure that the grout gets in there and really brings everything together. So I really like this design. It looks great. Awesome. This is where the glue comes in. I'm going to take this glue and it's going to hold these pieces in place just long enough for us to go ahead and move on and get that grout going. So we'll start our first coaster. We are going to use that cork base. Remember, it's really flimsy, so I want those larger pieces. For that project, I'm going to go ahead and use these big broken glass. What's great about these is that if you want a smaller size, you can go ahead and break these up a little bit more. You'll want to make sure that you are wearing safety glasses because glass shards can fly up at you if you are breaking them up. I want this because I know that these large pieces are going to create the stability needed for this coaster. I like these colors together. What I'm going to actually do here is I'm going to start putting them on and kind of getting an idea of the shape. Like, I want to fill this side, and one of the things I want to make sure is that I don't have any jagged edges popping out of the side, otherwise your coaster is no longer safe. Now stick that right there. That one fits there. Oh, I like that big piece. We're going to go ahead and stick that there. And I've got a couple of little green pieces, so maybe I'll put the little one right there, and we'll put that one right there. Notice I left a little space in between each of these pieces, and I did that so that there's plenty of space for the grout to get in. Now what I'm going to do is I want those pieces to stay put. I'm going to take a little bit of glue. Just to make it easier, I'm going to go ahead and pour that out on my plate here. Just get a little bit here, and I'm going to use a paintbrush. Awesome. And take a little bit of that glue. It doesn't need to be much. I'm just going to add it to each piece so that I can make sure that that piece is set and I don't have to worry about it moving. Awesome. Once I'm done with these green pieces, I think the next color that I want to put in line here is blue. So I'm going to go ahead and once again take those blue pieces. I want to find a nice kind of pattern where it fits in and I still have cracks, still have pieces here and there, especially towards that edge. Remember, I want those bigger pieces. That's what's going to create the stability. And then I can fill in these smaller areas just a tad bit more, right? And let's say, scoot those a tad bit closer because that, and once again, take my paintbrush and I'm gonna make those stick. You'll want to make sure if you have any little ones helping you out with this project, it is a little bit difficult with some of these glass pieces. They may be a little sharp on the edge, so do make sure that you check them out and make sure they're safe for them to handle on their own, or you are very closely by. Let's take some white. I like a little white color here. I've got some nice long pieces. I don't really have huge pieces, but the long pieces will help me provide stability too. So maybe if I can let's fit this one there. Oh, that looks perfect. And I'm just gonna go long pieces up. And that's gonna help provide a little bit of that stability that I need. What you wanna make sure is you don't have any natural lines across or up or down that coaster is gonna run the risk of cracking on. Let's do this piece instead. So I like those pieces there. I'm going to attach them and keep going. It's okay if there's a little glue, you can wipe that off. It's okay if there's a little inside. You don't want to pile that glue too much on where it gets in the way when we apply the grout a little bit later. But a little bit of that glue popping out the sides, that's going to be fine. So right now I want to finish this off. I want this nice big red piece in here. I'm going to try it that way. Oh, that fits there. And then maybe that small red piece just to finish out that corner. And now I think I've got a good design here. Perfect. Now before I let that glue dry, I'm going to make sure that I don't have any on the edges here. It's all on the base. And I'm going to let that dry for a bit. Let's move on to our next coaster. So with our second coaster here, I wanted a little bit more of that geometric shape. I'm going to use all square tiles. Something to note is depending on where you get your glass from, some of those sizes might not be the same as others. That's okay. Additionally, if you've noticed on my coaster here that I've already started some, they might not fully line up. And I've done that purposely because I see these lines with the popsicle sticks. I want to make sure I provide stability there. So I might have some a little higher, a little lower, just to make sure they're covering up some of those lines later on when we add grout. Sometimes it adds a little character, and I don't mind it if it's a little messy. From here, just like our last one, we're going to go ahead and add glue and just start pasting on our pieces. So this one I might do it right up on there. Might be a little hard. The next one might put it a little bit lower. That's okay. I'm just going to keep on going through, adding pieces. Just a little glue at a time. What's great is when they're still wet, you can move them a bit. Once again, I want to leave some space too. I don't want them right beside each other because otherwise I'm not going to get any grout in there and it's not going to stick after I'm done. So I want to make sure that I get all the grout in there that I can get in there. And let's do that one. Another great point of adding the base of the popsicle sticks is it's going to make the coaster a little bit higher. It's going to take it off the table just a bit more, allowing you to get that cork on, or you can use felt maybe as your base. That way it doesn't hurt your table. Whatever you've done, I'm sure that you want that coffee table to last for ages. There's no need to ruin it with a poor drink. Awesome. We'll scoot that apart. And I don't know. I like green again. I've got too many greens right beside each other. Let's go and do yellow. I like that one. This is where I meant sometimes those squares get a little hard. You see, they're really close together. I'm going to go ahead and move some up and down to create that space so that there is room for grout to fall into those spaces. And that way I know something is going to go ahead and hold that into place. Almost done here with our second coaster. Once again, I want to make sure that I don't have any glass or jagged edges popping off the edge. So as I kind of put them there, I'm going to make sure I line them up, and I've got plenty of space that no one's going to hurt themselves or cut themselves on that coaster. Talk about a party foul. Get that one right there. See if I can squeeze one more on there. There we go. So here our second coaster, you'll see that it's got some character. There's some spaces here and there. I wanted to make sure that no matter which way I gently bend this, it's not gonna fall apart. Awesome, let's move on to our third coaster. For our final coaster, we're gonna go ahead and use that plant saucer. I wanna make sure I'm protecting that table, so I'm gonna go ahead and add a cork base to the bottom. I went ahead and cut that shape out just so that it fits right on the bottom. And I will stick that right in. And now I've got a great base to build my coaster on. Once again, I want to try a little bit geometric shape here. I'm going to try and get a little bit more circular because obviously I've got a circular base. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take these yellow diamonds and I'm going to go ahead and get them as close to the middle as possible. And once again, I don't want them touching. As great as it would be to have them touch, I do want a little bit of space, just enough that I can get that grout in there later. This is what I meant. You might have some glue pop out because I'm moving it back and forth. That is okay. It's gonna dry, it's not gonna affect your grout. And I will keep on building. Make myself a nice little sunflower in the middle. And while the paint is wet, I'm gonna go ahead and move these guys around as much as I need them to be moved. I'm sorry, I meant glue is wet, when the glue is wet. On that note, you're more than welcome to paint your coaster if you'd like. If you don't like that rustic red, go ahead and give it a paint job right before you add any glass. Gonna take some black. I think these fit perfectly in this space up here. So I'm gonna go ahead and go all the way around, adding the black diamonds in those spaces. A little bit of glue, and awesome. I really like the shape we're going at. I think what I wanna do is I wanna add a tad bit different colors here. So why don't I take some of these blue squares, I'm gonna put them on the ends here, kind of, so they kind of fit in together. Kind of like that. Once again, no need to be a perfectionist. It's gonna add a little character as we get going. Looks like I'm missing one blue square, so I'll see if I can get another one on there. Awesome. Got some spaces up here. I'm gonna go ahead and add in my triangles here. I'm gonna still leave that space just to even that out. But I wanted to add little triangles here to finish out these edges. So in between those edges here, got a little glue too high. I'm gonna alternate some black and yellow. Cool. And I'll find that other blue piece and stick it in there. Now that I've got my third coaster, let's go ahead and grout all three of them. And now we're ready for the grout. With our craft grout here, I got this nice container. You're gonna wanna be a little bit light on that water. A couple of other things that you'll wanna pay attention to is when you're pouring the dry grout out, you'll want to wear a mask. You don't want to inhale any of those particles. Additionally, when you're getting rid of the leftover grout or whatever waste you have, there's a few tips that you need to keep in mind. First, try and mix the least amount of grout that you need for your project. If I mix too much, I'm really wasting a lot of grout, and that's a lot I've got to get rid of. Second, you never ever want to rinse any of your equipment in a sink. A lot of that grout's going to come off, settle down in those pipes, and you don't want to pay that plumber later on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of grout. I'm going to say probably for each of these coasters, a little less than a quarter of a cup maybe. So I'm going to go ahead and put enough in here, and then I'm going to add a little water and mix it up with a disposable spoon. That way, all of this stuff, I can let it dry and put in the trash, and I don't have to worry about it clogging up any pipes. Let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and pour in that grout here. Pour it in a little bit at a time. As you'll see some dust fly up, that's why you want to wear your mask. You don't want to be inhaling some of these particles. Think of this grout kind of like the baby sister to concrete. Would you really want to inhale concrete? Awesome. Right here, I think less is more. So even though I said maybe a quarter cup per project, I can always add more grout. I'm going to go ahead and use that much. Going to add just a tad bit of water. and I'm going to go ahead and stir that up as best I can and add more water until I get to the consistency that I want. So here we've got a pretty good consistency. I've got enough that it's kind of runny, but it's not going to go ahead and dry up in 2 minutes here. I'm going to take that runny bit and I'm going to take a nice big glob and I'm going to plop it right on. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and press all of that grout into every crevice I see. I want to make sure I get it all around the coaster, into that glass. I want to cover up all the shards that might be sharp. So I'm going to push into those areas and get it as close to the edge. We'll take care of the edges here in a bit. And it's okay that I'm covering up all the glass. We're going to get to a point where we're going to clean off that and it'll be nice and bright and shiny right afterwards. Push that in. Now what I like to do is I like to make sure I get all the way to the edge here. So I'm actually going to take a little bit more grout and I'm going to make sure I get it into the edge right by the base because I want even those outside pieces of glass covered. Push that in. And it's okay, we can clean up a little bit while it's drying. Just make sure you know what you got. And I can run my finger and make sure that I don't have too much of that on the bottom base. And I will continue going all the way around, make sure I get it all in there. And then I'll clean up that edge and move it away and continue going. Clean that up. Now, I'm a firm believer that it's not a good project if you didn't get a little messy. Put that back on there, get that on the side, and we'll rub that off. Now what I'm going to do, just to double check that I get all of that grout in, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm pushing in that grout. The final thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take a nice flat edge like a popsicle stick. And I'm going to use that to kind of brush off the upper amount of grout that I don't need. And I can brush that right back in and use that on my next coaster. So here I am making sure I get most of that excess off. From here, I'm going to let that sit for about 5 to 10 minutes. And then I'm going to clean up some of those pieces of glass. Let's move on to our next coaster here. Same deal, I'm just going to go ahead and plop on all of that. Mix it around and push it in. What's great about this being geometric is it'll save a little on grout because I won't have to use as much. There's not as many big spaces. Some people prefer that. It's going to be great and stable and hold these pieces together. Just like before, I'm going to go and push those out. Make sure I get the sides all covered and push in that grout. And just like with our last coaster, I'm going to go and take that straight edge and I'm going to try to gently take off the excess and I can reuse that later. Awesome. We'll set that aside, dry for 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll get to cleaning that up. So our final one, I'm using the plant saucer. And what I wanted is I wanted nice clean edges, so I went ahead and prepped it with some painter's tape so that when I get the grout in there, I'm not going to mess up the edges. I'm going to go ahead and pour in the grout that I need, and in the same fashion, I'm just going to go ahead and press those in to all the crevices and all the way up to the edge, the painter's tape. Awesome. Now what makes it a little bit difficult again here, since this has a ledge, I can't just scrape it off. And so you're going to do the best you can to scoop out any excess and maybe get a smaller flat edge to help get some of those out. I find this spoon works really, really well. I'm gonna go ahead and tap that in. And when the spoon doesn't work, sometimes you can use your finger for those odd shaped angles. So I'll use my finger, push that in, and move that around so that not too much, not in excess, is stuck on top. It's gonna make it really hard to clean. Awesome. And I see some air bubbles that pop in, and that's okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just go ahead and grab some of that grout, just push it right in, make sure I fill all those air bubbles. You don't want any holes here for any of that water to slip in. That can cause some issues. Just like if you have a crack in your sidewalk, you're gonna have some issues when the water gets in there. It starts creating a little bit of that erosion. Awesome. So I'm gonna try and get as much of that excess out as best as I can. And just like the other two, we're gonna go ahead and let that sit 5 to 10 minutes. So it's a pretty tedious process, but a couple of these sponge corners, and you're really gonna finish out every little piece. Once you get it to about here, like I said, it's not gonna be perfect. We're gonna worry about buffing that out once all the grout has finally set tomorrow. But I'm gonna go ahead and pull off this edge because I don't want the tape stuck there tomorrow. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull that off. I'm gonna dump that out. I'm gonna let my coaster go ahead and sit until tomorrow. So finally we're gonna let those sit for 24 hours. This is a coaster I've already done before. I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I buffed off all of the final bits that I want off, and I'm gonna take a sealant and I'm gonna spray that over so that no water gets in and destroys that grout. You don't want the water condensation from your cups getting in there. You'll want to go ahead and make sure you're wearing a mask or using it in a well-ventilated area. And it's going to be a quick spray here. Shake it up. You're going to evenly spray it across a couple times. Maybe let it dry for a bit and give a second coat right there. Once again, you're going to go ahead and let that dry. And then once that is done, you have a perfectly sealed Mosaic coaster. Thank you for making Mosaic coasters with us at Denver Parks and Recreation at home. We'll see you next time.